Politics. This is the show where you can ask me anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask anything that you like about politics. Nobody's going to judge you or roast you. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I don't judge people based on their political viewpoints. So if you're asking a question that's clearly a Republican question, that's fine. If you're asking a question that's clearly a Democrat question, that's fine. Lefty, righty, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. Everybody is welcome here. There's no fighting, there's no judging, there's no roasting, there's no debating. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. What is up, Willie? Good to see you again. Anybody else got a question? Just throw it in the chat and we will get to answering it. Sid says free Palestine. Hell yeah. Willie, I appreciate that, man. She's doing great, healthy and happy, eating lots, sleeping lots. To everybody else, welcome. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. What's up, Bert's? Good to see you again as well. Yeah, every kind of question is welcome, whether you are a left-wing person or a right-wing person. What's up, Mikhail Meme? Good to see you again. Average Joe says, would you judge their political viewpoints if they were a member of the Nazi Party? Asking for a friend. That's pretty funny. I don't think that a person who has fascist or Schnazi beliefs, I would immediately be like, get out of here. Maybe we could probe it a little bit, and then I'd give them my honest opinion, which is that is a toxic trait, and it is, how would you feel if that was you being demagogued and marginalized by other fascists, shit like that. But yeah, just because they're welcome to ask questions on the live stream doesn't mean that we're gonna be besties. All right. Willie says, thoughts on Thomas Massie losing his primary? I mean, this is the direction the Republican Party has been going for a really long time. It's the party of Donald Trump. There's no room for anybody else in that party. And so where MAGA, the movement MAGA and the Republican Party are sort of like losing steam generally, the independent thinkers, the people that actually stand up to Trump, they are going extinct even faster. So, you just got to think about this like, that game at the arcade that just sort of like slowly pushes quarters forward, it's like that. And the more against Trump you are, the faster you get knocked off of that ledge. Bert says, what do you think about the recent White House shooting, another staged event? I don't think that one was staged. And I know that, there's no real evidence that any of these shootings have been staged. I think that if you acknowledge that, then you can also entertain the idea that maybe some of them were. But, we all have to be honest about the fact that there's no like solid definitive evidence that Butler or the White House Correspondents' Dinner shootings were staged at all. But yeah, I think that's, if sort of like on a macro level, the instability, the chaos, the corruption, the division that the sort of like Donald Trump show has created, it kind of lends itself to this environment. Like, there's a reason why hate crimes and political violence have been on the rise ever since he sort of like came on the scene politically, ever since he descended his golden elevator in 2015. There's a reason for that. When you go out and do rallies in front of tens of thousands of people and you encourage them to beat the shit out of protesters and reporters, and you encourage police officers to beat the shit out of suspects, you create an environment in which violence is acceptable. And then there are certain people who are going to view that as an invitation to be violent to you. And I cannot condemn it in strong enough language. Like, I'm against all violence, be it political or otherwise. But, I think that when you encourage violence, you encourage violence. And when you create chaos, you encourage violence, All right, Mikhail Meme says, you could replace the Trump administration with one from the past, which one would it be? I mean, the Biden administration was great. You know, Lena Khan over at the FTC. You had some great people in the Obama administration as well. Really, the only problem I had with the Biden administration was Biden. You know, so I would do the Biden administration again, just you know, with a different president, maybe. Okay, let's see here. Going to the bottom. John says, are both sides, Democrat and Republican, bad? No. Democrats aren't perfect, but they're way, way better than the Republican Party. And I'm talking about the politicians here, not the voters. I'm not throwing shade on Republican voters. Ardil says, do you think gooning should be mandatory? That's pretty funny. I'm sure that RFK would say so. You know, like we're dealing with a testosterone crisis right now, and one of the best ways that you can raise your T levels is to do some gooning. That is not medical advice, just me doing a bit. Joshua Kimmich says, "What was the best Democratic president ever?" Oh, I don't know, but I did think that I hesitate to say what president did a good job because like you're never really sure what the president was responsible for versus their administration. But you know, I'll go to bat for the accomplishments of both the Obama administration and the Biden administration. All right, somebody whose name I can't read says, how about the rare Trump administration win of arresting Hassan call to violence Piker? I feel like I would have heard about that if Hassan Piker got arrested. Or were they just calling for him to be arrested? Like, I haven't heard about that. Blake says, yo, what party do you support? Democrats up another ballot. Daphne says, are you right-winged or left-wing? I'm left-wing. The Fixer Mike says, I support the birthday party. That's pretty funny. All right, Ardale. All right, did that one. Very funny. Logan Dixon says, does America need a real America First candidate in 2028? That's a really good question, Logan Dixon. So I think that we need to clarify the difference between sort of like America First versus Citizens First, because there's an America First. First of all, we should just like make sure that we're all clear that America First was the slogan of the American Nazi Party in the 1930s. So, you know, coincidence that the Trump administration adopted it? I don't think so, but I think we should all be clear that that's where that phrase came from. Okay, so there is a difference between America First, let's not spend money $1 billion a day on a stupid war in Iran. Let's not send money and weapons to Israel as they're committing genocide and war crimes to the people of Palestine and starting fights with all of their neighbors, versus the America First that says we shouldn't be doing USAID. Because one of those things is like morally correct and also good for America in general. And so, yeah, I think that we can take a look at our foreign policy and go, okay, no more bombs for Israel. No more $1 billion a day war in Iran. That doesn't make any sense and doesn't align with any of our political goals. But also, like, we need to recognize that outreach, that charity to underserved nations is beneficial for American citizens in general. Okay, let's see here. Somebody, again, Nick says, Nick's America First is the only way forward. Is that your name? Nick? I don't understand. I hope you're not talking about Nick Fuentes. Stephen Peterson says, why do a lot of people say JFK was one of the best presidents and some even claim the best? I'm not really a historian. My general take about JFK, and I need to read up on it more if I really want to be, really want to answer this question as substantively as possible, is that he was a new kind of president. He was young. He had young ideas. He was very progressive for the time. And so people were really looking forward to what that presidency was going to achieve. And it seemed as though he had certain things in his sights, like, civil rights, equality, and also, sort of like economic equity as well. But yeah, more than that, and I think that also, he gets lionized because he was so, unjustly and, so we got to see so little of his presidency because he was assassinated, Let's see here. Odinson, great to see you again. Yes, it has been a while because my wife gave birth, and so we've been raising a child. Okay, Mountain says he had the lowest approval rating weeks before his death, so it's more of a past ideal than reality. I mean, I get what you're saying there, Mountain, but just because he didn't have high approval ratings doesn't mean that he wasn't a good president. You know, like the Affordable Care Act had really shitty approval ratings until the Trump administration tried to get rid of it and people recognized that it was saving lives. Okay, average Joe says Hassan Piker was contacted by Fox News to comment on a subpoena issued by the Treasury Department for his humanitarian trip to Cuba. He does not promote violence. That was a lie. All right, so whoever said that Hassan Piker was arrested or that he was calling to violence, just want to let you know that what you said was inaccurate. Thank you for that fact check, average Joe. I appreciate that. Mikhail means I would take Obama, even though I support right-wing Republicans. Obama was goated. Yeah, Mikhail, because you're Swedish, right, Mikhail? Like, I'd love to get into why you consider yourself to be more right-wing or aligned with Republicans. All right, let's see here. It's John Bruce. His politics is not real and they have no actual control. That is inaccurate, John. There are many examples of people's lives getting better or worse depending on who is in charge. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. Oh, right. The fiction Mike says, didn't like Obama until he was gone, and I realized what we lost. Yeah, you know, that's what they say. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Joshua Kimmich says, do you know who Ozturk is? And if yes, do you think it was good? He got deported. I do not know who that is. So sorry, Joshua. Thank you, Steve and Alice, for your congratulations. Thank you, Odinson. Appreciate it. Okay, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Tom DeLuca says, Congress is complicit in violation of the Constitution most blatantly with not recognizing the ERA. What's your take on fixing that? It's interesting, Tom DeLuca. I'm not really sure how Congress has blatantly not recognized the Equal Rights Amendment. That is the ERA that you're referring to, I'm assuming. But yeah, I mean, if you want to argue that this current Congress is in violation of the Constitution because they are allowing Trump to sell political pardons and have a cryptocurrency and accept a $500 million plane or whatever from the Qataris and have his sons fucking flying all around the globe doing business deals, selling political favors, you know, et cetera, then yeah, like I'm down for that argument, but I'm not really sure where they have been explicitly violating the Equal Rights Amendment. Let me know what you think about that. Max W says, talk about Palantir, a far right-leaning tech company that is closely aligned with the fascist Trump administration, you know, whose entire stated goal is to use AI to collect all of our technology and you know, put us into a fascist what do you call it, surveillance states. Nothing to see here. Doesn't seem wrong. It doesn't seem wrong to me at all. Joshua Kimmich says, are you a feminist? Yes, I am a feminist. The Fixer Mike says, can't wait for Massey to read more Epstein files on the floor. I can't wait to either. Did you guys see Ted Lieu? He went out there and just blatantly said, like, the reason why they are blocking the Epstein files from coming out is because there's evidence in there that Trump molested children. Like you don't usually say that if you are an elected representative unless you have the information, unless you have the facts to back it up. You know what I mean? Okay, Mikhail says, I support right-wing Republicans because I remember when the left took in a lot of immigrants in 2015 to 2022 and crime rates skyrocketed. Again, Mikhail, where are you from? Because that didn't happen in America. Because immigrants don't increase crime rates. They commit crimes at lower rates than the naturalized citizens. So wherever you're from, maybe that happened. But you know, and I don't really believe that crime is correlated to the number of immigrants that are coming into a country. So, you know, maybe we need to iron out some of the discrepancies in our data, Mikhail, you and I, and maybe we can come to some sort of accord there. All right, Average Joe says, one of the reasons that negative propaganda is so successful is because lies intended to evoke negative emotions don't require context to be believed. Refuting those lies does require context, which takes time. 100% accurate, average Joe. The Victor Mike says, acting AG Todd Blanche also led under oath, and I'm excited for the consequences. I would love to see those consequences. I desperately hope the Supreme Court does not go to bat for them. Max W says, has anyone else seen a bunch of stuff on all the data centers? I mean, do you have, you have something specific that you're referring to, Max W? Joshua Kimmich says, is it true that Trump is removing LGBTQ rights? Yes, that is 100% accurate. CS, the Scientology TikTok runs. We need to see some Palantir TikTok runs. You know, I can't advocate for that sort of thing, but, you know, what an interesting thing to say. What an interesting thing that you have said there, CS. Hold on a second. Josh, I see you. I see you, Josh. There you are. You're popping up on my restream. Okay. The more immigrants that come in, the more crime Republicans commit to make it seem like they're correct. That's pretty funny. Okay. Dimitri says, do you like garlic? I do. I'm half Italian, so I love garlic, but I'm also half Jewish, so it gives me acid reflux. Username says, are you a Democrat? Yes. Some dude says, how do you feel about when they go low, we go high? I'm still for when they go low, we go high. I know a lot of people kind of like attribute that to Democrats losing elections and not doing well in sort of like the zeitgeist, but I think that there are other culprits for that. I think that when we get down in the mud with the Republican Party, we all get covered in mud, and it gets really difficult for people to tell us apart. All right, user, a whole bunch of numbers says, why aren't you farther left? Can you tell me what it is that I said that makes you believe that I'm not far enough left? Joshua Kimmich says, should America remove ICE? Yes, 100%. Average Joe says, oh shit, I forgot about the multiverse. That's pretty funny. All right, Fog of War, great to see you again. Christian H says, how should we remove Israel from our politics? So short version is vote for Democrats, because if you're looking for the politicians that stand up to Israel and AIPAC, they are all in the Democratic Party. Even if the Democrat that you are voting for specifically is a little bit closer to Israel and AIPAC than you would like, then being elected still gives more power to the Democrats who stand up to Israel and AIPAC. Like AOC would have more power if there were more, you know, Chuck Schumers in the government. And if Biden were president, Bernie Sanders would have more power, you know, shit like that. The long answer is, you know, you got to go do the work in the primaries, and you got to make sure that those Democrats that are actually more aggressive about standing up to Israel and AIPAC are the ones that actually win their primaries. But failing that, just vote for the Democrat, my guy. All right, CS says, call your representative if you think they cater to Israel too much. Yeah, that's another thing you can do. There's a lot of tools in our tool belt there. Okay, Joshua Kimmich says, should guns be harder to access? Yes. Christian H says, ideal Republican Democratic candidates for 2028. I mean, I'm not really about wish casting for 2028. I just got to say that we got to focus on 26. We got midterms coming up. User a bunch of numbers says, voting Democrat is still pro-Israel and capitalist. Also, they don't care about us indigenous people. That is inaccurate. User a whole bunch of numbers. If you are looking at the achievements of the Democratic Party versus the achievements of the Republican Party, it is clear that the Republican Party is hostile to the indigenous community, and maybe the Democratic Party could be better towards the indigenous community, but they're still way better than the Republican Party. Additionally, better is better and worse is worse. I guarantee you that there are people living in the country surrounding Israel who would get down on their knees and beg you to vote for Democrats if they could, because things are so much fucking worse for them right now that Donald Trump and Republicans are in charge. Use a whole bunch of numbers. Let me know what you think about that. Fogwar Productions says, GOP ballot harvester got 11 felony counts for signature fraud in my county. I met the guy. Ooh, did you know this about him when you met him, Fogwar Productions? Or was this like a, you know, I can't believe I met that dude who now is in the news for going to jail? All right, Max says, I don't even know if voting would work anymore. Maybe something harsher. No, Max, voting is still one of our main tools that we have in our tool belt. I do not advocate for harsh things. I'm sure that you're probably referring to like violence or property destruction or shit like that. But I don't advocate for that at all. And if voting did not work, the Republican Party and the Republican-controlled Supreme Court would not be working their asses off to try to stop you from being able to do it. Ugh, excuse me. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, I'm a communist. What's your opinion on communism, like Marxist Leninism? If communism is workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is employee-owned companies like Publix grocery stores and Bob's Red Mill, then I'm for it. If communism is nobody gets to own anything and there's no private companies, everything is just one big pool of things, that seems a little sloppy and extreme to me. Like maybe we can work our way towards that, but yeah, I'm all about giving workers more power and having sort of like communist principles in place. Maybe like a mixed model where we have a little communism, a little socialism, a little capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Nick says, what will make corporations pay a living wage if they can hire foreigners on H-1B? So if somebody comes into this country, they legally required to pay them the same amount that they would pay an American citizen. Just because somebody is here either undocumented or a legal resident on a work visa doesn't mean that they're allowed to be paid less. Now, is it possible that immigrants coming in are undercutting Americans for somehow, some other way? Maybe, I suppose. But I think your issue is not with immigrants coming in. Your issue is with predatory corporations who are skirting the law. Eddie M says, so in your ideology, who would supply the capital to start those companies? You talking about employee-owned companies? Investors, I suppose. Like you can still make money in employee-owned companies. They exist. I don't know the history of Bob's Red Mill or Publix grocery stores, but they're wildly profitable companies. They were started somehow, you know. Okay, Nick says they'll fire citizens trying for more pay first. I just don't buy it, Nick. I don't buy it at all. Again, we're blaming immigrants for the sins of the wealthy. So how about we retrain our targets here on the billionaire class? If I'm gonna blame somebody, I'm gonna blame somebody on a yacht, not somebody who is desperately trying to smuggle them and their family across a border to get away from cartel violence or civil war or shit like that. If somebody is impoverished and desperately trying to provide for their family, then yeah, I'm not blaming them for shit. Alrighty, let's see here. Joshua Kimmich says, I wanted Trump to win in 2024, but now I'm more of a leftist thanks to you. I appreciate that. You saying that, Joshua. Yeah, what was the issue, or do you have like a specific issue that made you think that Trump was going to be better in 24 than Kamala? Let me know. Eddie M says, who are the investors the employees would go to start corporations? I don't know. Again, I'm not a historian of employee owned companies, but they exist and they're great. So anybody wants to give that a Google for me, answer this question for Eddie M. CS says a lot of the impoverished were caused by the USA actions as well. Unfortunately, 100% accurate there. Eddie M says millionaires and billionaires. So you believe that millionaires and billionaires are going to be funding these employee-owned companies, and are you saying that that's like a bad thing or a good thing? Are you saying that we shouldn't start employee-owned companies based on millionaire funding because millionaires are bad or something? Like, I'm not really sure what your point is here, Eddie. Max W says, are we the bad guys? American citizens are not the bad guys, but the American government has many times been the bad guy. Joshua Kim says, have you voted Democrat in every election you've voted in? Except for my very first election, I voted independent, and I will not do that again anytime soon. Ivan Cisco, great to see you again. What are your thoughts on Kamala wanting the elections reports, and how would that change anything? Wait, so are you talking about 2024, Ivan Cisco? Because I haven't heard that story. I'm really interested in hearing more about that. Let me know. Clarify that for me. Okay, thank you, user. I am smart. Nick says there's an effort to make Spirit Airlines and ESOP. Just have to pledge until crowdfunding is reached. I did see that, and I thought that was really cool looking. Eddie M says, you're the one that doesn't like millionaires and billionaires. Yes, that is accurate, Eddie M. But that does not mean that we cannot start employee-owned companies without millionaires and billionaires. So I'm happy to go into more details on this. If you shoot me a DM, I'll try to find you how these companies were started and if they started as employee-owned companies or whatever. Nur says, what do you think about Hungary? Don't know too much about it. I will say that I'm sure the people there are great. Don't know anything about the government, though. D. Deliar says, Western F up Middle East, and they are shocked that they are immigrating to their countries. Yeah, 100%. User bunch of numbers. His opinion on a revolution taking place to overtake Trump. I think that it is unlikely that we will see any kind of like. I'm assuming you're talking about like violence in the streets or like a military coup or something like that. I think that's probably unlikely. I think the most likely situation is that him and his Republican Party buddies are voted out of office. Okay, Awesome Joe says, you a Democrat? Yes. Max W says, don't know how you can genuinely think a billionaire didn't get there without being sleazy. I completely agree with you, Max W. Ivan Cisco says, yes, she wanted 2024 reports. If I find it, I will send it to you. You know, Ivan, I think that's really interesting that she is trying to do that now and not when she lost the election. Now, normally I would tell you that looking into 2024 is kind of like a lost cause because there's no real hard evidence that there were any election irregularities. Thank you, my very smart wife. Changing our baby's diaper right now. No irregularities in 2024. However, there was the Rockland County case, which I believe was thrown out on like regulatory issues or whatever, not on the merits sort of thing. You guys want to see my baby? Come on in. Look at this. Look how cute. Look how cute this little nugget is. This is my baby, everybody. Look at this. All right, I gotta get back to politics. Goodbye.
We get back to politics, please.
Anyways, what was I saying? Where was I? So yeah, I'm interested to see if Kamala Harris putting her weight behind that could actually give that case a little bit more juice and maybe bring some of that information more to light. All right, Misty Lane, great to see you again. Says, can politicians even write policy used to regulate private equity firms? Yes, I mean they have in the past. They can in the future. The problem is not that it's impossible. The problem is that money being in politics makes it really difficult to do that. It is a high degree of difficulty. Now you'll notice that there are a lot of people out there who will chant over and over again, nothing ever changes, it's impossible, voting doesn't do anything, etc., ignoring the fact that not only has some progress happened, but more progress would have happened had it not been for the influence of the millionaire and the billionaire class and other sort of election chicanery. And so we should use that to sort of like funnel us to like push us forward, as opposed to having it sort of like what do you call it, depress us into inaction. Alrighty, let's see here. Josh Sarris says, behind every decent streamer is his wife telling him how to pronounce things or something. That is very funny. Ecuadorian says, what is a Democrat and a Republican? Is that a fruit or a vegetable? That's pretty funny, Ecuadorian. Yeah, Misty Lane, I was gone because we had a baby. I'm sure you just saw. Okay, use a bunch of numbers. The peaceful revolution is almost impossible because oppressors don't like giving up power without blood. I completely disagree with that. Use a whole bunch of numbers. I would recommend you check out a political scientist named Erica Chenoweth, who has crunched numbers and found that peaceful revolutions are way more productive than violent ones. Alrighty, Eddie M says, Public was founded by George W. Jenkins in Winter Haven, Florida on September 6th, 1930. All right, well, that's a little bit of information, Eddie M. Appreciate you giving me that. Period says, who do you support for governor for California? I mean, I think that any of the Democrats are fine, but if I had my choice, it would be Katie Porter. Crafts and Bacon says, why are liberals called liberals when the meaning of liberal is liberating? Positive. I'm not really sure where your wires are getting crossed there, Crafts and Bacon. We Rolled says, I have one main political agenda, abolishing money for the future of the planet. It's an interesting idea, Werrell. I don't know if we're close to that yet. CS says, who do you want for LA mayor? Oh, I can't remember her name. It's on my ballot already, but I know it when I see it. So, unfortunately, I had a baby, so I've not been as up on my I have not been as up on my, learning people's names. All right, Max says, are all people that are conservative evil in your opinion? No, no. I think that it is a difficult case to make that elected Republicans are not evil considering what they have accomplished, but voters are voters. And so, I don't believe that we should blame voters for the actions of the people that they voted for. Okay, period. Is it scary that Hassan Biker is getting subpoenaed? No, I mean, the Trump administration has been weaponizing the justice system in big ways ever since the start of his second term. And if I'm remembering correctly, there was some in the first term as well, but I can't think of any examples right now. So, yeah, it's scary for everybody, but it's not really like, I wouldn't consider that an escalation. All right, somebody just wrote Stein, so I'm going to give you an opportunity, whatever your name is, to not be anti-Semitic going forward. Max says, do you think there should be a third party that has the best of both traits? I mean, I don't think that there's anything good in the Republican Party's policy platform. Like, what would we take from that? Like, cutting taxes for the rich, cutting regulations for their companies? Like, it doesn't really seem like there's any value there. And I don't think that what Americans want is a little bit of the Republican Party and a little bit of the Democratic Party. When you got two people arguing about whether you want to have pizza or hot dogs for dinner, the answer is not pizza with hot dogs on it. You have to. Yeah, there's got to be a better way to make that decision. Okay, Mikhail Meme says you did not read my answer before about right-wing Republicans. Ooh, what was your answer? I'm not against immigration. My dad is from Finland, and I have a lot of immigrants friends. I'm from Sweden. No, I read your thing about the crime rates, Mikhail Meme. So, yeah, sorry if I missed something. Okay. Let's get back into this. CS says, do you find it interesting Nick Shirley wasn't subpoenaed? Nick Shirley's the one that was doing the reporting on Minnesota, right? Question mark. Foghorn Production says, the guy wasn't local at all, brought to Utah from North Carolina during the anti-Prop 4 ballot initiative. Oh, so he's a carpetbagger also. Luis says, what do you think about German? I am German. I mean, from everything that I know about Germany, never been, but it sounds like a dope-ass country. I am concerned about the far right, coming to more popularity in Germany. Bad things happen when that happens. I'm concerned about the rise of the far right in every country, but particularly Germany for obvious reasons. Foghorn Production says he was paid by some pro-Trump organizations to be here. That tracks. Period. Says Kamala wouldn't have subpoenaed Hassan for going to Cuba. That is 100% accurate. CS says, yes, that's who Nick Shirley is. He went to the same hotel as Hassan. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so a right-wing person pushing right-wing propaganda narratives is not suffering the same judicial consequences as a left-wing person pushing left-wing politics. How about that? Max W says, what about Texas, though? What about Texas, Max W? Let me know. JP says, thank you. Glad you are back. I've missed the... Well, I got to do something when I'm vamping and reading questions. Let's see here. Mikhail Meme says, this thing with crime rates in Sweden, I think you should look it up. And there is a lot to tell and explain. This will take too long. I think, yeah, I'm interested in it, Mikhail Meme. I just know that from American immigration data, that there is no correlation between a rise in immigration and a rise in crime. But I'll check it out. I'll look at the Sweden shit, especially if you email me, a story to check out or something like that. Okay, Luis says, yeah, I hope the AFD party gets banned. 100%, I agree with that. Fletch Lives Again says, thoughts on some people being easily misled by Trump, for example, agree. What can we do about it? So it's a really good question. I think there's a bunch of different flavors of people getting tricked by Trump and the Republican Party at large. What do we do about it? We talk to people in real life. We have to sort of phone tree our way towards getting people out of their misinformation bubbles. We can't fight the information oligarchs. Every information platform is owned by a billionaire who is either far right or a little more far right. And so the only advantage that we have is in numbers of people. So talking to people in real life, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, our family members, the people that already love us and trust us, and then hopefully they tell their friends and they tell their friends and they tell their friends, et cetera, et cetera. Period says, does Trump meet the criteria to be considered a fascist? Oh, easily, 100%. Fogwar Production says, good news is he got arrested in North Carolina, and we're working to get him returned to Utah to face justice. Love to see it. Chili Supremacy says, why do many Democrats dislike Bernie Sanders? I don't think that many Democrats do dislike Bernie Sanders. Chili Supremacy. Are you referring to Democratic voters, or are you referring to like other elected Democrats? Let me know what you think about that. Max says, what should the U.S. do about borders? They should protect them. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, Mac. All right, somebody whose name I can't read says, do you think that everyone has the right to vote? Yes, I do think everyone has the right to vote. Average Joe says, Nick Shirley did not stay at the same hotel. Assange's group, including dropsite journalist Ryan Grimm, stayed at one of the few hotels approved by the U.S. Nick Shirley, however, did not. Oh, so Nick Shirley didn't stay at a hotel that was approved by the U.S., but Hassan did? Well, how is that interesting? Oh, that is interesting. Michaela Meme says, how do I email you? If you go to my website, there's a link in my bio. It'll send you to my website. You can email me through there. Okay, let's see here. Louis says, I'm sorry for your politics standards in the USA. I know it's down bad in Germany, but USA is burning. Oh, yeah, 100%. Shit's real bad here in America. And, I'm doing my best to try to fix it, but, we all have to be a part of this coalition, like I can't do all this shit by myself. Max W says, is Alex Jones a prophet? I think you're probably, I don't know what that question means. Mikhail Meme says, what is a good Republican to you? I mean, there's a sliding scale. The Republican Party in America, even the best Republican, still capes for trickle-down economics, cutting taxes for the wealthy, cutting services for American citizens, cutting regulations for businesses so that they can poison our air and our water with toxic chemicals. So, Thomas Massie standing up to Trump and, getting the Epstein files released, like that's pretty cool. But didn't you vote for the big beautiful bill, Thomas Massie? Didn't you approve a bunch of the fucking ding-dongs that are currently in charge of all of our government administrations? So, less of a piece of shit, but still a piece of shit in my opinion. All right, Orsky says, what's your opinion on Israel USA alliance? I mean, it's a bad relationship. It's been a bad relationship for a long time. I think that because we now have multiple agencies, independent agencies, that have found the Israeli government led by Benjamin Netanyahu guilty of war crimes and genocide, that we are legally not allowed to send them any more money and weapons. In addition to it just being morally the wrong thing to do, it is illegal for us to continue doing that, just based on our own laws. Hastor says, do you think that all humans deserve what we need to live, even the worst criminals? Yes, 100%. Okay, Luis says, what is your opinion on communism, even if it doesn't really work? I mean, we don't know if it works or not, Luis. Every country that calls itself communist has actually been authoritarian, which is antithetical to the philosophy of communism. The short answer is, if communism is workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is employee-owned companies, then I'm for it. If communism is putting the lowest paid employees on the board so they have representation for what the company itself does, then I'm for it. Char Bell says, what about Hezbollah? What about Hezbollah, Charles Bell? Jill Supremacy says, do you think Jill Stein supporters don't understand politics well? I mean, it's a difficult question. There's a bunch of different reasons why a person might want to support somebody like Jill Stein. I think if somebody supports Jill Stein, I don't think it's that they don't understand politics. I think they probably just don't know Jill Stein that well, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that she is an agent of the Russian government. She has done nothing for the Green Party except for pop in every once in a while to be a spoiler candidate for the Democrats. So, yeah, that's my general take there. Orsky said, you said he's convicted, but he isn't actually. I don't think I said anybody was convicted, but I did say a bunch of independent agencies have, actually, no, I think you're referring to Netanyahu, Orsky. Let me know. Did Big Yahoo get convicted already? So yeah, Netanyahu was indicted by the International Criminal Court. I don't know if they have had a trial. I don't know if they have a trial if the person's not there. But yeah, independent agencies have concluded that Netanyahu is a war criminal and that his government has done a genocide. Okay, Max says, so we've never seen communism a single time, but all countries that claim to be communist end up bad. Yes, That is accurate, Heck. So I'm not really sure what. I don't know if there's a point you're trying to make there. Mikhail Beam says, what are your thoughts on millionaires, billionaires who want to pay more taxes and vote for Democrats? They're the only good kind. Mikhail Meme. Josh Sarah says, if socialism was so bad and doomed to fail, why has America spent the last century pouring money into making sure socialism fails whenever it's tried? That is an excellent point. You know, there are many examples of left-wing governments being fucked with by America and by the CIA. Okay, CS says, what percentage of Stein voters do you think are virtue signalers? Ooh, I don't know. 20%, 30%? I don't know. Ooh, ready. Let's see here. Fred Eric says, what about when the U.S. supported leftist governments like in Yugoslavia? They still failed. I gotta be honest, Fred, I don't know what you're referring to there. Does anybody want to fact check Fred Eric and let me know what he is referring to? Because, that is over my head. I find it hard to believe that America would have supported a left-wing government in Yugoslavia. Maybe a neoliberal government in Yugoslavia. So, Yugoslavian government through loans. Fred Eric, I don't know if anything that you're saying is accurate. This is the first time hearing of it. Odinson says, what do you think the fear would be from the U.S. of left-wing governments? I think that there is a strong oligarchy and has been for a long time. The powerful want to protect their power. And when rich people see a country getting by without rich people or flourishing without rich people, when there are good bosses as opposed to bad bosses, it makes it harder for the bad bosses, basically. That's a short version. Fogwar Production says, Yugoslavia was communist, but was effectively a neutral party during the Cold War. But I don't even know if it was a real communist country, or if it was a communist country like Russia and China. Lucas says, what do you think about the U.S. government now? Terrible, one of the worst that we've ever had, fucking things up for everybody, making everything harder and more expensive, and increasing global instability. There's more corruption and grift and incompetence than potentially every American government from the founding. Odinson says, forgive my ignorance, do socialist countries not have a sect of elites? So again, I don't believe we have seen a 100% socialist country. Like, you got countries like Venezuela that call themselves socialist, but if you have a small group of people who get 90% of the benefits of the country's industries and natural resources, then by definition, it is not a socialist country. The closest thing we have to socialist countries are the Nordic model, where you have like a mix of some socialism and communism and capitalism, all right, Sword says, can I ask you something? Yes, you can. Chile Supremacy says, do you think Trump is like 1985 Apif Tannen? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the people that wrote the Back to the Future series have said that they based Biff Tannen on Donald Trump, didn't they? All right, the Progressive Talk says, yep, most people don't realize we have a mixed government and economy. That is accurate. Jeannie says, how legal was the recent AG letter doing a get out of jail free pass for all the Trump family? I don't believe it has any legal standing. They just talked about this on Strict Scrutiny, and I don't know if they talked about it having any sort of legal basis. If I'm remembering their conversation correctly, it's like laughable. It's like writing an executive order that has exactly zero legal basis. I do not believe that is the sort of thing that can hold muster in the next administration. There's certain rules, like if you pass legislation, if you amend the Constitution, those are very difficult to undo in the next administration. But executive orders and whatever this AG memo is, I don't think that those they have any kind of sticking power. All right, Fred Eric says, mixed economy isn't socialism. Socialism requires most economic activity to occur in state firms. Yes, I believe that's accurate, Fred Eric. But what I'm saying is the closest thing to socialism that we've ever seen are these mixed economies, because no country has ever achieved full socialism, and countries that claim to be socialist are not socialist. Okay, Iyad H says, I can fact check that the US did give Yugoslavia loans. That's it, and it wasn't communist at the time. Yeah, I just have more Fred Eric, I got more questions about this than answers. So I don't think that this was the gotcha that I think you were going for. Sword says, "What do you think about the Iranian regime?" I mean, it's a bad government. It's a theocratic autocracy that is repressing and murdering their own people. Just because they are, though, does not mean that our government is good. So yeah, two wrongs don't make a right, I suppose. Period says, "What is single payer healthcare and is it a good thing?" Single payer healthcare basically says that in America, we have a system where you pay an insurance company, and then the insurance company is kind of like a middleman between you and getting health care. And the insurance company gets to decide what you pay for and what you don't pay for and what they pay for. And it's really expensive, and it delays a lot of care, and sometimes they make it impossible for you to get care. Universal health care is, instead of doing health insurance, we would all just pay a little bit more in taxes, which is less than we're paying now. We just pay a little bit more in taxes, and then everybody just gets to go to the doctor whenever the fuck they want, and there's no bills. It's just we all pool our money together via taxes, and then all of our healthcare gets paid for in that pool of money. And yes, it is 100% better. Sword says, "What do you think about Pahlavi?" I don't know who that is. I'm so sorry. Average Joe says, NATO, including the U.S., were bombing the Yugoslavian government in the 90s. Not sure that counts as supporting. Plus, TikTok blocked this comment. Oh, that is interesting. So, yeah, Fred Eric, I don't know if it's as simple as you are making it out to be. All right, let's see here. Mikhail Beam says, which European leader as of now would you choose to be POTUS? Oh, I'm not too familiar with the various leaders in Europe right now. I mean, I think Germany generally does a pretty good job of picking progressive leaders, but again, I don't really know. I know not Italy, because isn't that like Mussolini's granddaughter or some shit like that? All right. All right. Pakistan says, what do you think about CDU? Don't know what that is. Pakistan also says, what do you think about Trump? Trump is a grifter, a con artist, and an incompetent person. One of the worst presidents to have ever existed. Ruzlik says, my favorite TikToker said his income went from $1,500 a month from TikTok to $20 after the app was sold. Oh, well, that's interesting, I suppose. Yeah. CDU is the Christian Democratic Party in Germany. I don't know anything about it. Sorry, buddy. Sword says, what do you think about Netanyahu? Netanyahu is a terrible, terrible person. He is a war criminal. He has been perpetrating a genocide on the people of Palestine. He is a warmonger. He is trying to start wars with all of his neighboring countries, Iran, and I believe I can't remember the other countries that he's. Yeah, I feel like I'm so close to saying the wrong country that I'm just gonna dip out of that. But yeah, he's a bad guy, bad leader, bad person. Pakistan, Lebanon, thank you. I almost said Libya, so I was right to keep my fucking mouth shut, Lisa. Thank you for the assist there. Bakanan, I think that's how you say your name, says, what do you think about Biden? I don't love Biden. He was in government for a long time. He did a lot of good things. He did some bad things. He did some really bad things when he was president, but his administration was great, accomplished great things. I think that if Biden had not been leading that administration, it'd probably be like top 5 in American history. Without Biden, I do not believe that the Biden administration continues to send money and weapons to Israel after they start doing war crimes. I do not believe that Biden decides to run again. That's another big sin of the Biden administration. All right, Denton Gray says, do you condemn Chinese human rights abuses? Yes, I do. Kuwaiti Kami says, what do you think about Obama? I like Obama. Pac-Man says Newsom. Newsom's fine. He's not my favorite. He's not my least favorite. Sword says, which country has the worst government? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But America has got to be up there. Boo. Josh Sarrow says, what do you think about someone using an infant as an excuse to not tour with Steve Foster? Can't be trusted. Cannot be trusted. Ruslik says, is Trump being paid to attack Iran? Do you think bribery? I don't think it's that simple, Ruslik. I think that there are a lot of potential shitty motivations for Trump starting this stupid, incompetent war in Iran. I think that people like Lindsey Graham and Netanyahu probably like blew up a lot of smoke up his ass to try to convince him that this would like make him the greatest president in American history, that he would go down in the history books as the president who did blah 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 or whatever. I think that people who are heavily invested in the military-industrial complex were probably pressuring him as well. I think Netanyahu. No, sorry, I did Netanyahu. Excuse me. I think that he really likes the press that he gets when he executes successful military operations, even if they are disastrous in the long term. Yeah, I think that he also has like his brain is like stuck in the 1980s where invading Middle Eastern countries and stealing their oil is like the greatest thing that America has ever done, and so I think that that's part of the motivation as well. You know, he just really doesn't give a shit about people, especially if they are a darker skin tone than his, and so he doesn't really view bombing those people as being a bad thing. You know, I think it's a net positive when he's like, "Oh, our bomb accidentally hit a school, and now a bunch of like 150 schoolgirls are now dead." I don't think he really gave a shit, you know. Max says, "Why did he endorse a black governor then?" Trump will hype up anybody that S's his D. He will say nice things, and he will endorse anybody who starts off the conversation with Trump is the greatest human being alive, the greatest president alive. You know, it's the reason why he won't say a negative thing about Zohran Mamdani, is because Zohran Mamdani fucking played him like a fiddle. You know. Okay, Michael Tom says, don't you tell me what to do. Democrats are corrupt. They stole your money. So I never told you what to do, Michael. That's number one. Democrats are not corrupt. The Republican Party, their whole platform is corruption. So if corruption is a problem for you, then I would not vote for the Republicans. And the Democratic Party did not steal my money. Right, Denton Gray says, do you support assassination attempts on Trump? No, I do not. I do not condone any kind of violence. Shiny Glimpse says, Lula or Bolsonaro? I don't remember enough about those two people to comment. Richie says, who's the best to vote for in the UK? Either the Greens or Labour, not the Tories or Reform. Michael Thorne says, where is the corruption on the Republican side? All right. So I could talk for an hour just on this, Michael, but I'll just give you a couple of hits. All right. One, Trump has a cryptocurrency by which he is able to accept bribes from people, and we'll never be able to know about it. He is selling political pardons, and the Republican Party is letting it happen. Ted Cruz v. United States made it possible for there to be more corruption in campaign finance laws. Elon Musk paying people $1 million to register to vote Republican. Elon Musk sending fake mailers to voters in swing states. Let's see here. Republican Supreme Court justices saying that a bribe isn't a bribe if you get it after you do the thing. Citizens United. Yeah, you know, I could go on and on. Fred Eric says, why do you support the Greens over the Liberal Democrats? I don't. Shiny Glimpse says, is Brazil significant in global politics? Yes. Max says, can you give me a website where this is happening? Can I give you a website where what is happening, Mac? Max says, by the way, didn't Biden pay for people's college tutoring? I mean, he canceled some people's student loans, but I don't know what you are referring to, Mac. What's up, Spirus? What is going on? Let's see here. Scott Clare says, wants an IRS based on all of his corruption for him and his family. Yep, there you go as well. Mikhail Meme says, if you lower the taxation for the rich with big companies, doesn't it lead to them making more money and is more with 20% with more investments, lower taxation, than 30% with less taxation? So I have not found that to be true at all, Mikhail Meme. Like right now in America, the rich have never been richer, and giant corporations are, reporting massive profits, and they are laying off people left and right. And this started before all of this artificial intelligence started coming onto the scene. Like, this is not about, oh, now we have so much more money, we can do so much more business and hire so much more people. Like, it's just not happening. Like, it is enabling a hyper monopolization that is decreasing worker power and decreasing worker pay and decreasing worker benefits. So we are not seeing any benefit at all. The only people who are benefiting from this are millionaires, billionaires, stockholders, etc. Irish Page says, where have you been? I haven't seen you in weeks. You haven't seen me in a month exactly, Irish Page, because my wife gave birth. And so now we have a baby, and we were raising the baby. All right, gonna go ahead and block this FX person. Thank you, Oceanaholic. Denton Gray says, off the politics, does the average American know that the Soccer World Cup is about to start in the USA? I mean, is it? Tickets aren't being sold. People are scared to come to this country because they're worried that ICE is going to throw them in jail, where they're like, hey, I'm a soccer team. Like, why are you invited me here to play football, as we call it, Okay, thank you, Kimberlina. Thank you, Blair Cohen. Thank you, Irish Page. Mac says, what do you think of DEI? I am for it, Mac. Would you like me to go into more detail? Let me know. Okay, Ayad says, are you opposed to communism and supportive of socialism? I am not a communist or a socialist or a capitalist. I believe in a mixed model. And if that mixed model works great and you want to try to do a little more communism or a little more socialism or whatever, I'm down with that. But I do not believe that we are prepared as a species to jump right in to either communism or socialism, totalitarianism. Alrighty. I got two people asking me to go into more detail on DEI. All right, that is the next thing. Jojo says, do you think memes ruin political discussion? I don't, but I do think that memes is one of the tools by which information environments ruin political discussions. But I don't think that they necessarily are the thing. They're part of it. They're part of the discussion. Okay, so we're doing DEI. We're talking about DEI. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything important. Okay. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is it? Why is this happening? Why do we support it? The people that are currently in charge of government, giant corporations, people living in good neighborhoods, people going to good schools, people whose families are prospering and making tons of money. Across every spectrum, the most powerful people and the wealthiest people, they all tend to be white and male and straight. And a lot of the reason why that is the way it is because for years, we have created, not years, for hundreds of years, we have lived in systems which have prioritized straight white men and have marginalized and oppressed everybody else. So what do we do about this? Are there ways in which we can have a more equitable society where if 20% of the country is African American, it would stand to reason that 20% of CEOs should be African American and 20% of senators should be African American, et cetera, et cetera. If 50% of the country is women, then it stands to reason that 50% of CEOs should be women and 50% of senators should be women, et cetera, et cetera. One of the ways that we do that is with DEI policies, meaning that we acknowledge that different kinds of people have different skill sets and bring a greater benefit to the organizations that they are a part of. What we also see in DEI is fighting against an inclination to just hire or promote the same types of people, because we have these unconscious biases that have developed over decades and decades, where we have an image in our head of what a successful senator or president or CEO is, and it generally is a straight white guy. So how do we fight against that? What you find, and so like that's kind of like, I'm doing a real sloppy version of describing what it is and what the benefits are. I think that the most important point when you're discussing DEI, because of the way that it gets maligned in right-wing media, is this idea that what DEI does is it promotes marginalized people, Black people, women, the LGBT community, whatever, over more qualified white people or males or straight people. But if you look at the data, what DEI actually does is make sure that overqualified, marginalized people don't get passed over for promotion for mediocre white people. All right. Let me know if that makes sense, if I need to go into any more details there. Max says, do you not think the best person should get the job? That's what DEI does, though. DEI makes it so that the best person gets the job. Bogos Binted says, where do you get that jump in reason that everything must be exactly the same as the racial gender breakdown of the country? The jump in reason, Bogos Minted, I don't know if I would describe it as a jump in reason. It feels just to me. It feels fair to me that statistically, if there are this many of this type of people in the country, that statistically there would be that many people at every level, like if you know how if you get like a salad and like you got like your lettuce on the bottom, and then you got your cucumbers on top of that, and you got your tomatoes on top of that, and you got your croutons on top of that, and then you put your dressing on top of that, and you just fucking shake it so that there is an equitable distribution of all of those things. Not all the tomatoes shouldn't be on the very top, and all the croutons shouldn't be on the very bottom, but that is the society that we have right now. Now, does it have to be exact? Do we have to have the exact percentage of Hispanic CEOs as we have Hispanic people? No, but like it should be closer than what it is now. Like right now we have a pretty wide gulf there. Odin Sun says, are standards lowered under DEI, or is that a myth? That is a myth, 100%. Again, the reason why we need DEI is because we have a history in this country of, let's just say there's like a hypothetical company out there that is trying to find a CEO. And you got two candidates, one white and one is white and one is Black, and the Black person is qualified and the white person is not qualified. We have a habit of promoting the white person because how do I put this? Like hires like, or we have an unconscious bias for what a CEO looks like. And so, both of these guys interview and you figure, all right, well, that I know that white guy's family because him and his dad and I went to the same college or whatever, or I don't know, that other guy just doesn't feel like a CEO to me, And so fighting these unconscious biases and fighting this structural inequities takes things like DEI. It takes, you got to kind of like shake people out of their regular routines to be like, look, this person's better. This person has a better resume. This person will be better at this job. Sometimes we don't recognize when we think that we are not hiring somebody because they are part of a marginalized group. All right. I hope this is probably like the sloppiest way that I've described DEI since I've ever done this show. But I just took a month off. I'm sleep deprived from having a baby, so I hope you guys will forgive me. I'm pretty sure I got the basic points, but it definitely wasn't the most elegant way that I've ever described it, Okay. Odin says, do you think the Dems could do a better job presenting their arguments? So short answer, yes, Odin Sun, with an asterisk. I do think that the Democratic Party gets a bad rap for being bad messengers, Because how do we judge how a political party is at messaging? It's usually just, did they win the election? And then we go, oh, the messaging was so great. The messaging was so great because they won the election. But if the structure of the government gives an advantage to the Republican Party, then it stands to reason that it will look like they are better at messaging just because they win more elections. Now, again, I do think that the Democratic Party can be better at messaging, but I don't think they are as bad as people make them out to be. Or at least they are not significantly worse than the Republican Party at messaging. I think the Republican Party is really, really bad at messaging, but they have a couple of advantages that makes it seem like they're messaging geniuses. Like, they have a massive and unprecedented propaganda network that spans social media, mainstream media. It's like insidious. It's like a fucking hydra, you know? It's an infection. There's also, the Electoral College. There is also the fact that the Republican Party is more of a monolith as opposed to the Democratic Party, which is a big party made up of a bunch of little groups. It's a lot easier to have a successful messaging strategy if you are a Republican candidate. All right. I have got to get out of here, everybody. It's about an hour. I'm still working my way up to my old, to what do you call it? To fighting strength here. Taking a month off will do that to you. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the live stream. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all the support. If there are any questions that you have that I was not able to get to on the live stream, please reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved in politics. So if there's something you want to know about, or you want to know how to be more involved, and you want to do some work to actually try to help what's going on in the country, in the world, whatever, fucking hit me up. DMs are open. You can also email me through my website. You can also hit me up on my Discord channel. Discord channel is a great place to be also because there's a great community there. Also, it's a great place to get in touch. Also, there's recommendations there for books and podcasts and civic action that you can take. And we desperately need people to take these civic actions. So please do the work. Do the work. That's the only way that we get out of this, guys, is that we do the work. And the more people that do the work, the less work that we all have to do. So let's all get out there and fucking do the work. Let's get out there and fucking do the work, everybody. And if you want to support the show financially, you can. You don't have to. I know that it's difficult out there with the cost of living crisis. But if you have the dollars and you want to give them to me because you support what I'm doing here, the mechanisms exist. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a subscriber on TikTok. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you nothing, helps me out a ton. And you can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And there are some fun incentives if you do the $10 a month level. Special thank you to all of my regular financial contributors: Pliff, Average Joe, the two Seans, D, Shannon, Carmine, Patrick. If you want to get your name read at the end of the show, join the Twitch, join the TikTok, or join the Patreon. All right, any final things, any final fun things to discuss here? Let's see here. John Abbott says, the best person never gets the job. Someone who's overqualified can demand higher pay. The companies don't want that. They want people who are barely qualified and can be paid barely enough to stay. Maybe that's the thing that happens. Okay. Bogos Binted says, you don't seem to be concerned about more women working as firefighters or military soldiers. Only when it comes to CEOs and senators. No push for more women representation as garbage handlers. Bogos Binted, I think that it's important to recognize that equity should exist in every sort of like layer of the salad, if you follow my metaphor from earlier. Just because I did not specifically mention them does not mean that I don't give a shit. What I'm mainly concerned about is, why are all of the most powerful people straight white men? And so, yeah, let's get some more women firefighters and more women soldiers and more women garbage handlers. Whatever the fuck they want to do, let them do it. But the positions that they are currently being repressed from the hardest are those top of the echelon positions. And I see you, Bogos, but I see you trying to strawman my argument here. Alrighty. Jules says, "Are politics rigged?" Not fully, but the billionaire class does have a stranglehold on our electoral system. So it does seem as though that is the case. Sonia DeBoss, yes, we did have the baby. You missed her. She did a cameo about 30 minutes ago or so. But yes, we had the baby, and little Gemma Berenstein is doing great. Ave Christus Rex says, "What do you think about theocracy? I'm against it. I'm for separation of church and state." Bogos Binted says, "You can't even ensure equity for two people raised in the same household. How do you expect to do this for an entire country population?" Well, we don't need things to be perfectly equal, Bogus Binted. We just need it to be more equal and more just. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for being here. Do the work. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.